Welcome to Flux Fantasy Fest. This event features a special OC sponsor from the Flux Destiny universe. These characters were created to participate in the Flux Fantasy TTRPG, and you can meet them and learn more about them when you join a game of their own. Let's meet the OC who joined in to help make this event happen. Say hi to AJ, created by our own fandom rockstar, Nikki. AJ Diamond is a first-year student at Wolfgang Academy, known for his bright and cheerful personality. Outgoing and friendly, he loves making others smile and making new friends. Those around him say that he often radiates warmth and positivity. Despite his sunny demeanor, AJ carries a sensitive side. He tends to overthink situations and struggle with conflicts. He thrives when surrounded by encouragement and people he trusts, letting his true colors shine in moments of connection and support. As a creative escape artist, AJ's chemistry revolves around music and singing, which he channels for both fun and battle. He can shape musical notes into sparkling fireworks or send them flying as attacks, and his voice holds the power to influence emotions, soothing anxious allies or boosting morale with a cheerful tune. For defense, he can construct walls of music notes, providing barriers against harm, and when moving quickly, he leaves behind a trail of stars that grant him a speed boost. His chemistry abilities combine artistry and strategy, reflecting his joyful yet determined nature, making him a creative and inspiring presence amongst his peers. He's part of the Starboys gang at Wolfgang, which is a very special group in our community. If you've had the chance to meet AJ, let us know in the chat what your favorite moment with him was. Thanks so much to Nikki for sponsoring this event, and to everyone here. We hope that if you see AJ out in the wild, you'll go say hi and introduce your OC. Now, on to the event. All right. Hey, James.
Hey, how's it going? It's good to be here.
Good to have you. And it's good to have all of you guys here with us. Welcome to our headline event for tonight. I am so excited. We are so excited to have James Introcaso here with us. And this is going to be he and I were just having a really great conversation right before the live. And we are already on the same page about a lot of stuff. So I'm really excited to hear, to have this. So you guys are going to really enjoy this conversation tonight. Let me just introduce you, James, real quick, and then we'll get right into it. James works full-time at MCDM Productions, and he is the lead designer at Draw Steel Core Rules. He's the game director of the upcoming Crows RPG and the lead designer of Flea Mortals. Also the MCDM Monster Book, Where Evil Lives, the MCDM Book of Boss Battles, Kingdoms and Warfare, Beast Heart and Monstrous Companions, The Talent and Psionics, and Arcadia. He's also the co-creator of Roll20's Burn Bright RPG, co-author of 7 official Dungeons & Dragons books, and author of numerous other RPG supplements. So you've been rather busy. I think we can use prolific. I think this is when we can say prolific with what you've been up to, right?
Thanks. Yeah. It's been almost 15 years now, I guess, that I've been writing about RPGs since like the end of 2012. So it's been a while, and I also appreciate that you are the first person to ever pronounce the title of Flea Mortals correctly, right? Most people would call it Flea Mortals. They don't put that comma in there, and that comma is so important. It's so important. I'm really, I'm excited. And the probably even more important to me for this conversation is that I've been playing role-playing games now for 31 years. And I started running games pretty much from the jump, right? I love to run role-playing games, and I love to play role-playing games. So I'm really excited to be here and to talk to everybody. And I also want to shout out to AJ for the sponsorship of this segment. So awesome. I'm really excited. That was such a cool video to have up front. That was so awesome.
No, that means a lot. I know that's going to mean a lot to AJ's creator, who's a big member of our community, and she's going to really dig that. And you mentioned the me pronouncing Flea Mortals. Well, I think that's kind of the stuff you and I were talking about, was getting into character and really just getting into things, and that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. You know, the official topic that James is going to talk about is why you should be running your own TTRPGs. But I think we're going to branch into a lot of different things, and that was kind of a preview of it. And our OC sponsor tonight with AJ is a great example of what happens when you invest in something in your own, you know, creative works. When you find something that you're really excited and passionate about, and you invest and put the time into it, and you explore a character. You know, we just had a successful Kickstarter for our original character journal, which is a 140 page like workbook where you can go in and explore your character and all these different aspects of the character in ways that you may not have done before, and to get ideas out of your head. And I know you can probably associate with this really well, where you have like all these ideas in your head, but if they're only for an audience of one, you need to get them out, right? That's like so important.
Yes, absolutely.
So yeah, so you're the one, I'm here to interview you. So I want to hear from you a little bit before we go into the questions. So tell me what's on your head. What are you thinking about tonight? What are you excited to discuss? And
yeah, so it's funny. So my 9 to 5, right, is working on role-playing games and talking with people about role-playing games. It's great, and I really love it. And so I just came from meetings where we were talking about what is the experience of running Crows, this game that I am currently working on, going to be like, and how can we make life easy for the person who's running the game, so much so that the person who runs the game wants to do it, right? And that was a big thing for us when we were developing the game that I worked on before this, called Draw Steel. Draw Steel is a heroic fantasy role-playing game, right? And we wanted there to be some sort of temptation that when you're playing the game and you're on the player's side of the screen, right, how do we make it so that you as the player say, wait a second, I want to do that, I want to be doing that, right? And so we had that very same conversation today about Crows, which is pretty fortuitous given what we're about to talk about. So right now on my mind is like, Crows is a very different kind of game. Crows is a dungeon crawling game where it is very easy to perish as you venture into these dungeons. And it's more about like building a town together, bringing back gold. And then the town is like the constant, and your characters can kind of come and go, sort of like Darkest Dungeon, if you've ever played that game. Or there's a board game called Kingdom Death Monster, right? It's the RPG version of these things, the tabletop RPG version. And so on my mind is like, how do we make it that you want to be behind the screen for Crows, that you want to be what we call in that game the referee, the person running the game, right? And so that's really fun. Is like, for me to think about, that's what I naturally gravitate towards, right? Is being the person who wants to run the game, because I find it fun and it's something that I've been doing for a long time. But we also want to draw people in, and there's a lot of reasons as a role-playing game company you would want to do that. Some of them are mercenary, obviously, right? But a lot of them are just because, like, that's what we love, right? My boss is a guy named Matt Colville, who's a YouTuber who made his name creating a series of videos called Running the Game. That wasn't for any reason other than he just wanted more people to start running role-playing games for their friends, because he thought it was fun and thought he had something to say about it, and he did. And it got a lot of people involved in running games who had never run them before. And so, like, that's part of who we are too as a company. It's part of our mission, right? And I got on board because I like that mission. So anyway, that you asked me what I'm thinking about tonight. That's what I'm thinking about right now. Is how do I get more people to play Crows and get behind the screen?
You know what's interesting is that at the risk of going way off topic, but what's interesting is that I have found, and from personal experience, not just from I'm not casting stones. I'm like, this is from my own personal experience. I think a lot of times it's a fear of making decisions that keeps people from putting things down, right? Living up here, it's really easy to have that music video of your character or your scene that's playing in your head. But like getting it down on paper means you have to commit, and you have to actually, like, it's no longer nebulous, you know? And I think that plays a part of it too.
100%. And I actually think it's why you'll see a lot of people gravitate towards the thing a game does really well. So for instance, D&D is a game that has a lot of rigid rules around combat, right?
Mm.
And those rules, like, you look at a character class in Dungeons and Dragons, 95% of the things that you get are things that aid you in combat, right? It increases in hit points and new fighter maneuvers or spells that deal damage or right, whatever. And then you get like some occasional things here that might help you in the investigative realm or in the interaction realm or right exploration, right? But a lot of it is combat. And so then when you see people plan games, a lot of times, especially if they're new, they're planning one combat right after another because combat is safe
Mhm.
for us if we're running a game for exactly the reason you said. The rules tell us what to do. We don't have to make any decisions. Oh, the dice say this, and when the dice say that, the book says that this happens, and so yada yada, right? And when it's when we get out there and it's like, okay, the fun of the player is thinking creatively, thinking outside the box, but responding to that does
Yeah,
bring, I think, a fear of
that's true.
like, I don't want to tell you no, but I also want things to be a challenge, right? Part of the fun is that it's a challenge and it should be, so how do I get to this place where it feels fun for you and I'm not ruining that fun by making the wrong decision, right? I totally agree. That's really good analysis.
Yeah, it's just sometimes it takes a little self-reflection, right? To go, well, why is it taking me so long? Well, it's maybe I'm just afraid to put things down on paper. So, but that makes sense. So on that, like, with it, you have, we just went over the career you've at this point you've had, which you've done a lot of really amazing things, but it started somewhere, right? It started somewhere with you. Since tonight we're talking about, why you should run your own TTRPG. First, what first got you into running your own role-playing games instead of playing them? Was it right off the start, or did you play first and then jump to the DM role? How did that go?
Yeah, I have the most prototypical sort of getting into role playing game story, which is that my older brother was playing in our parents' basement when we were kids, and the guy playing the cleric left the game early, and they wanted somebody to heal them, and they were like, "James, come here, sit here, roll the dice we tell you to roll." Right, but watching them play sort of absorbed this whole like, whoa, this is a game where you can do anything you could do in real life. And I've always wanted that. And I grew up right in the late 80s and early 90s where like video games were still like Mario 3, right? And so you couldn't do a lot more than jump and throw fireballs, right? And so this was like, whoa, opening this whole new possibility of like, I always wanted a game like this where these things happened. And then some of my other friends who were my age telling them about it, and one of their fathers was like, "Oh, I played that in college," and so we started to play this game called the Fantasy Trip, which is actually like a precursor to GURPS made by Steve Jackson Games. And so we were playing this game for a long time, and my friend whose dad had the books, he was running it. And learned, we learned a lot from him. We learned a lot from his dad about like how it was running and stuff. And eventually he said, I really want to, like, you looks like you all are having a lot of fun. I want to do that. And I was sort of, as a 9-year-old was like, hey, I don't like being told that I can't do stuff all the time. I
Yeah.
want to be the one telling you that you can't do stuff, right? So we switched, and it was a true like we would all rotate and take turns, and we learned from each other. It was also a great little deal where it was like, well, you gave me a great magic item last time. I'll make sure your character gets a good magic. All the things that you do as a 9, 10, 11-year-old boy with all of your friends. But it was so that was really the thing that got me into it was I'd watched a lot of other people do it, and it looked like they were having fun, and I always liked being in charge. All right, like I was like, "Oh, this is great." So when they were ready to rotate out, I was always ready to rotate in. And what I learned from that was you got to write your own things. You got to create your own worlds when you were in that seat. So it was like, oh, this is great. I got to create my own character when I'm on this side of the screen, but when I'm on that side, when I'm running the game, I get to make any character I want, because I can make NPCs and I can make villains and I can make monsters and I can, create gods and things like that. And I also get to create worlds and that sort of thing. And, when you're in the 10-year-old perspective, that's like real cosmic power that you can feel as a storyteller. And I think that was really, for me, the big drive. And you and I were talking before this about how, like, when you're a kid, you have this unbridled creativity. There's no shame or insecurity about it because you're playing pretend all the time. And nobody's telling you not to. Everybody's encouraging you to do it. The gifts you get on your birthday, the things that you're doing in school, it's all about like igniting your imagination, right? And so that was just an amazing thing for me to be able to do, to sit down and say like, well, what am I going to do next week? Oh, let me think about it. Oh, it's going to be amazing. Right. So that really drew me to it, and was a lot of fun. It was sort of the first time I got to indulge in world building. Right. And have other people have to pay attention to what it was.
It's funny. I think you and I would have been very good friends when we were kids, because I, I had the same, I had similar experiences, and they would, I would, for example, take my, god powers in games very seriously. Like for anything, like even board games. Like I used to drive my little brother crazy because we had the game of life, like the game of life, right? That old board game.
Oh yeah.
But I would overcomplicate and I would add layers to it. I started adding things like, oh, well, you need to buy insurance, and and I didn't know what the hell, I was 12. I didn't know but I would start like creating all these obstacles for my little brother, right? And so I'd be like, oh no, I'm sorry, you have to buy this policy. And I started writing like insurance policies and stuff for him to buy on that. So, but any game that I had a chance to do what you're talking about, which was basically, like you can command this and you can go in there and really, play with the world, was a lot of fun, even as something as like mundane as the game of life.
That's
and
amazing.
it's fun. I've just enjoyed that. And I think this is, so two things. One is that you were just saying a second ago, the conversation you and I were having before the live began, which was, becoming an adult doesn't mean losing your creativity or your whimsy, for a lack of a better word, right? Like you have to, I think a lot of people, as they grow up, we start seeing, they start mixing in certain things that you need to certain things that you need to, obviously, as an adult, you have to behave a certain way, obviously, because you're mature, right? But then we start lumping in storytelling, fun, creativity into that. And we start putting it into a bucket of, oh, that's what you do in art class at, in sixth grade. No, that's not. And it's a shame that, and I think a lot of people, when they start unlocking that, and they kind of unlock that accidentally through hobbies and things, they don't really, I don't think they know that that's happening, but they'll do hobbies and they start finding their creativity again by accident. And they're able to do it through something like a hobby because that's like socially acceptable, right? Like, oh, I want to do this. But
Yes.
I think that's it. Once you do that, and that's what I love about tabletop games, is they allow you to have fun and to act and to live vicariously through these characters that either you are, whether you're in the game or whether you are in the game master's chair like you, in yours. Why do you think running a game feels intimidating for so many people?
Oh yeah. And it's funny, it's a thing that, as I get older, right, I understand more and more. And part of it is the life commitments, right, that people have. People have higher pressure. They have a job, right? When I started, I didn't have any job or responsibility. I was also the youngest child. I didn't even have a younger sibling to look after, right? Um, they might have children or older people in their life that they need to look after, right? They might have relationship obligations, right? All that kind of stuff. And I think what happens is they start to look at what is happening as, oh, this is a lot of work, right? So there's a fear of, oh, I have work to do, right? Like that prep is like so much work that I'm going to have to take care of. There's a fear of I have to know all of the rules, right? That I think is, and these are all fears, by the way, that I think are legitimate to have, but also the thing that you're afraid of is not true. And then I think the big fear, right? The underlying fear on all of that is I will fail my friends, right? And that's the big thing, is that like if you're gonna host a dinner party for your friends, you feel a tremendous amount of pressure for like serving food that everybody feels good eating. Who's got which dietary restrictions? Is there going to be enough food here? Am I going to make too much and waste food and then it looks extravagant? Did I clean up everything okay? Did I put on the right kind of music? Are we going to have enough to talk about? Right? All those sorts of fears that play into someone. I think those same fears in different questions, right, come to the surface when you are running a game, right? And a lot of that can be like, what if I do something wrong, right? If I do something wrong, or this appeals to the artist in me. Yeah, they had fun, but did they have as much fun as they possibly could have, or could I have done something different to make it more fun, right? Which is the like, yes, things aren't done their due in the world of creative professionals, right? It's like I could have kept working on that television promo. I could have kept working on that comic. I could have kept working on that song, right? But I had to get it down because I had to I had an obligation to deliver it to somebody at some
Right.
point. And like that can be hard too if you are running a game as a game master, because you'll start to think, was this fun enough? Was like, yeah, okay, everybody said they had a good time, but what if I had done this? That would have made it even better. Or what if I had let them try this that they wanted to try, but I said no, and that kind of thing. And so I think all of those doubts that you don't really have as a kid, right? When I was a kid and I stepped into that chair, it was mostly about me, right? It was like, I am going to have a lot of fun building worlds,
right,
being in charge, running the game, right? Like that kind of thing. It was not about, oh my gosh, what can I do for my friends? And like the truth of the matter for these things is that like, one, your friends want to have a good time, right? They're not showing up like, okay, now entertain me. They didn't pay to be there. They just want to be there to have fun, right? And they're your friends. And if they're your friends, they're probably your friends for a reason. But two is like their fun is not dependent on you in the way that you think it is. Their fun, they are going to show up. They're going to get to play this cool character that they have in their head, right? Maybe AJ, right? They show up, they get to play their original character that they have in their head. They're going to have a blast. And if you are having fun, they're probably going to have fun, right? And so that's probably one of the biggest things, is that like if you can learn to like, okay, I'm going to have fun. And then the other thing is learning to prep, right? What makes sense for you, right? And saying like, okay, I don't know all the rules. No one should know all of the rules in 300-page rule books, right? That's ridiculous. Even when Jeremy Crawford of Dungeons and Dragons is answering questions on Twitter or whatever, he's got the rule book in front of him, is looking it up before he answers, right? So what you need to do is say like, you know what? Somebody's here. They know the rules for this. They know the rules for this. This is how we're going to handle. If I don't know a rule, this is how we're going to handle it. I'm going to make a calling, and I'm going to let everybody know at the beginning, hey, if we don't know a rule, I'm going to make a call. Then we'll look it up when everything's said and done. We'll move on from there, right? Or, hey, if we don't know a rule, I know that you guys really care about the rules. We'll stop. We'll look it up, and then we'll keep playing, right? Whatever works for you and your group, right? And so it's about finding those things that work for you. And then in terms of your prep, it's like, what do I personally excel at improvisation with, right? Like I do great when we're in these situations, and I'm not so good if I haven't prepared this, right? Like, hey, I can come up with combat, for instance, on the fly, but I don't do so well with investigations and mysteries. So I should really, if I want to run a mystery, prep the beats and put the clues in and that kind of thing. Maybe watch some advice videos. But you know what? When they come against that dragon turtle, it'll be fine. I'll just throw in a dragon turtle, right? And so I think those are the things, and it may take you a while to learn that. And so what you need to do is prep as much as you are comfortable, right? People always say like, don't prep, and it's like, well, if you're new, then you may feel like, well, I didn't prep and now I got right. Like, and so prep as much as makes you comfortable, and then the next time, say like, okay, what did I do that maybe I didn't need to prep that much for? Or, hey, I have all this extra prep from last time that didn't get used. I'm just going to incorporate it here by changing some names. And, maybe instead of, hey, you're fighting bandits, you're fighting cultists now, but everything else is the same and yada, yada. Right. And so I think a lot of people have those fears, and it's about like getting them to experience it really for the first time to realize it's not as bad as you think. And in fact, it can be really, really fun if you care a lot about your own fun and what makes it fun for you, because that is actually going to be the thing that makes it fun for the players.
So you hit on a few things, and I've been writing these things down because you have hit on something that I think all creatives run through. And I'm going to start with the last thing you said, which is, I read this quote, and I always have these quotes that I butcher, but I don't remember where it's from. But if it was basically, if you, and I use it in my own work when I'm drawing manga pages or when I'm writing stories for our universe. If I'm not having fun as the creator writing it, the audience is not going to have fun, enjoying it. And so I have used that as one way to help me break out of my own cage of perfection, which is the next point I wanted to make,
Yes.
which was like, it when we get so rigid, about everything, as a creator, it makes me think of, I think that's another reason, tying back to what I was saying at the beginning of the conversation, where getting something out of your head, procrastination itself and perfection are forms of self-protection in a way, right? Where you're like not getting the ideas out because you're afraid of committing to an idea, or you're afraid of judgment, of putting it out there, what other people might say. And all these kind of forces that you think you're rationalizing as, well, I'm working on, I'm developing this, I need to spend more time, I'm not ready. Those are all you're rationalizing it under that umbrella that seems, oh, that's absolutely reasonable, you should absolutely spend time doing this, and you should spend all this time developing this idea. Absolutely, no, we will wait until you're ready to go. But it's actually, underlying that is a sense of fear of committing and fear of being judged, right? And I think that as creators, we suffer the same thing that people who go watch movies about books suffer. And let me explain what I mean by this.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean by this? Is that the
Uh-huh.
thing about books is that when you read a book, no one ever likes the movie adaptations. Maybe the only movie adaptation that I can think of, and I'm totally could be wrong. Maybe The Lord of the Rings, the original trilogy, might be maybe
Mm-hmm.
the most, universally one, like, hey, they did it really well. But normally when people read books, they have an idea in their own head, right, of how it's supposed to look. And it's their version of perfection of how that book should be executed. But when all these different people who've read the text and all have different imaginations that have been influenced by different things in life, their career, their family, et cetera, different media they've consumed, when they go watch the movie and it doesn't meet the expectation of the vision of their head, they feel disappointed, right? And I think we as creators have that in us, that in our head it's so perfect, right? It's this perfect concept, but getting it out on paper, it suddenly loses that perfection, right? Am I right about that?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I think you're absolutely right, right? That is a uh you know, I had a somebody say to me that like artists are always screwed because of
I'm
what's in
writing
your
that down.
head.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah. You're never going to be able to get it out there, right? Like, you know, when if you're a painter and you're looking at a landscape, you're trying to capture that beauty and you're doomed to fail. But you have to try, because what's in your head, you have to try to get it out there, right? If you're a dancer, you're trying to capture the grace of a deer, right? And you're doomed to fail, but you're gonna try anyway, and you're gonna, you know, get ever closer to that each time you go. And I think it's true too of people running games, right? That like you have this vision in your head of how things are and how everybody's gonna see your thing, and you are in many ways doomed to fail. And you're also doomed to fail because everybody else has a version of that in their head too that they're experiencing, and you are not an author, right? You are not a film director, because these other people all have input on the story too, right? And you know, somebody once said to me that like being a game master isn't really being like a storyteller, it's being a world builder, because what you're doing is you're building worlds for these characters to play in and have experiences, and then you respond to those actions that they take in them, right? Rather than trying to drag them through your novel, right? That you have written. And I think letting go of that instinct, and again, because that's safe, right? Hey, come with me, you will have fun if you just come this way, rather than doing the thing that you're telling me you want to do, which is probably going to be the most fun for you, right? Like by you saying I want to go to X and me saying no, you got to go to Y, right? But you're telling me you'd rather have more fun at X, right? Like I should go with you to X. I made X too, right? Like
Right.
X will
Yeah.
also be fun, you know. And so there's that kind of thing. I think that learning to embrace that will make your time as a game master easier, and it will also make your prep easier, because there's going to be a lot of things that you're like, these players, why did I prepare all of these rules and learn all of these things when what they really want to do is go, you know, and investigate this rumor that I sort of threw out on the fly, you know, because that's the thing that's most interesting to them in that moment. Pursue that, follow that instinct, right? Like this conversation that we're having right now, we're going down rabbit holes, we're having fun talking about the past and the future and what it means to be a creator, right? Like that's how a game should be. It's how a role-playing game should be. Follow each other down these rabbit holes. But I will say, if you're a player, also make life easy on your friend. When hooks are offered, look at those hooks. Take the one that you like the most. Don't try to create your own. You know, it's a give and take.
It's funny how much go with the flow can help in this and in life just in general. You know, there's just things and you just go with it. It's like, you know, you can get caught up, you know, with things that whether creatively or logistically in your life or whatever, and really getting to a point, it's not easy, but when you start realizing that life really is life and creativity is all this, it's all waves, right? You have your ups and your downs. It's all there's this dual quality to existing. And if you just kind of run with that wave, your life just gets better, you know. And your creativity gets better. I've gotten to the point where when I'm working on there's art that like I like, and my fans who watch the work that I do see me struggle over a drawing, for example, and they're like, well, why are you redrawing that line over and over, right? Like, why do you keep obsessing over that line? And to them, and my explanation to them is that to them it looks like the line is, you know, it's like that's the same line over and over. I can see it as a line that has just a slight curvature difference in the previous line, but the combination of the lines across the whole drawing make up the final piece, and having all those little nudges that I do add up to the final piece that's great. But there's moments where I have to just go with it. In times when I get so obsessed about like I need to get this line perfect, I actually do the worst, right? and just having fun and going. I'm like, I'm just gonna go. And I had one of my dear friends. Her name is Katie. I had this written down somewhere where she told me, she's like, that those your lines are perfect, just something like that. I forgot what she said. I have it written down somewhere, but it's like ingrained in my the philosophy of it is ingrained in me, where it's good enough. Go, it's like, go have a good time. So, you touched on prep, for example. What advice? So there's a lot of things that go into prep, and I'm sure adds into a lot of people's anxiety when they're preparing, whether it's their first time or whether it's, second, third, whatever. What advice do you give someone who feels like they're not creative enough to run a game? That they maybe feel like, oh, they're so excited and inspired to do it, but they feel that hesitation that they're going to be judged, or maybe they're prejudging, or they think that people will judge them for not being creative enough to run a game.
Yeah. So the first thing that I always tell people who say that, right, which is that you don't have to run a totally original thing for people to be happy, right? So a lot of times, if hey, what happens is, if we're playing D&D, for instance, we go to a dungeon, we fight some goblins, we get some treasure, we come out. That's going to be enough for like 98% of the players there. They're going to be like, that was the most amazing experience ever. Great. Right? The other thing I would say to them is, you should pick a game, right, that helps you tell the story you want to tell, because that's going to give you ideas and help you become creative, right? So, like, for instance, if what you're really into is mysteries, right? Dungeons & Dragons Pathfinder 2, Draw Steel, the game that I created, those are not the games that are the best for solving mysteries. You should look at Gumshoe games, right? Where, like, solving a mystery, it has a lot of rules built around it. There are a lot of adventures built around it and stuff like that, right? So finding the game for the story you want to tell is great. And here's the thing: people will be like, "Well, my players don't want to learn a new game." They will. They will follow you. Your friends will at least try for one night a new game if you say, "Hey, I'd really like to try this game, and here's what it is." And odds are you'll also be able to pick it up pretty quickly. A lot of people, I think, have trouble with the idea of learning a new role-playing game, because often your first role-playing game is D&D or something like it, which has 900 pages of rules, and it seems like it takes a long time to get into. And just the concept of a tabletop role-playing game is a lot to wrap your head around, right? But once you've done that, it becomes easier to do a second time, and then easier the third time, and yada yada. And so that's part of it too. But I would also say there's lots of great material out there from creators. Much of it's available for free online, where you can find ideas, right? You can get lots and lots of good ideas just by saying, like, ideas for role-playing game adventure, right? Ideas for role-playing game mystery, ideas for both. There's whole subreddits dedicated to things like this that you can look, and you'll have a lot of fun reading them. You can read adventures if you purchase them from people. You could go read great comics, right? You could read great books, and you could watch television and movies, and you can steal liberally, right? From these things, and pull in plot lines and stuff like that. But also, it's not all on you, right? You have a job as the game master, but your friends also have jobs when they are playing this game with you. They're also supposed to be creative. They're also supposed to bounce off ideas and come and have fun and stuff like that. So remember that, like, you are playing with these people, and you want to embrace that, embrace being a kid, right? Embrace the fact that, like, when you were a kid, you didn't hesitate to play pretend because you thought you weren't creative enough, right? No, you had friends over and you said, we're going to play pirates, or you said, we're going to play tea time, right? Or you said, we are going to play Power Rangers, right? Whatever it was, right? And you said, here we go. This is how we know what this is. I'm going to do this. You're going to do this. We'll play off each other. We'll do that, right? And know that the same thing here is going to happen, right? Are you as smart as a 10-year-old? Yes, you absolutely are. Smarter even, right? And so you can be just as creative as a 10-year-old. It's your inhibitions and your worry about not being creative enough that is causing this to happen, right? That like you're freezing up because you're worried about not being creative enough. Just go with the flow. And sometimes your first idea may not be the most creative thing, but it will be something people understand. And often these games are played in tropes, right? Hey, think about all the characters who are at your table. How many of them are very original? How many of them are reskinned Buffy or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle character, right? Or something like that you're like, wait a second, I know who this is. This is Michelangelo from Ninja Turtles just as a person and as a woman instead of a man and a turtle, right? You know what I mean? Like, so nothing is new under the sun. That's fine. Just have fun.
It's funny. What you were just saying reminds me of a story that I told. So I've got my daughter who's in high school. She is she studies like crazy. I mean, she is so intelligent, and she spends so much time reading and studying and preparing. And she knows she can sit and talk to me about any subject that she's on, and she can spill every detail about it. But this one time she was having this issue where she was preparing, and then she'd go and feel like she would not do well as she thought she was going to do on these tests. And she'd be like, I don't understand. And I was explaining to her the other day, I said, you know what? I said, it's the same thing that creative people go through, or anyone goes through, when you try to when you start trying to force perfectionism. It's like, one of my favorite philosophers is Alan Watts. And he told this story. He actually put this really well. He was talking about, like, it's one thing whenever you're watching like kids playing outside, but then if you tell that same kid, dance, show us that thing you do, dance for us, or whatever, do that thing that you do, or sing for us, or whatever the kid may have been doing on their own, but then you're forcing them to do it, out of like compulsory fun, right? Like forcing them to do something. They are taken out of that flow state of suddenly all those inhibitions come in, because you're like, I'm performing, I'm not playing, I'm performing, right? It's the difference between those two. And it makes such a big difference. And with my daughter, I was explaining to her, I was like, when I use that analogy with her, I was like, you are so worried about being perfect at this that you're actually blocking a lot of the things that are already in your brain, because you're more stuck in the like self-preservation mode, right? Where it's like it blocks out so much of it because you are so much of your brain becomes inaccessible because you're in survival mode. And so that your inhibitions that you talked about can come to the table and really sap your creativity when you can just go and have a good time. And I know it's like easier said than done. It's almost like that meme I've seen before, where there's a meme where I forgot what it is. It says, I'm depressed. And then the person says, well, don't be depressed. I'm like, oh, wow, I didn't think about that. Wow, thank you. It's like, but it's something you work at. You dip your toes in the water and you start realizing everyone else has the same inhibitions and concerns about their own, what people perceive them as, like, oh, someone's going to think I'm stupid or I'm silly or I'm whatever, and a lot of times they just need a cue to let go, right? If they see someone having a good time and letting go, they'll let go. Humans are pack animals, and a lot of that inhibition comes from, if you watch any like documentary about the savannah, and you'll see like all these gazelles running together, right? They don't want to be the outliers because the lion is going to see them and catch them, right? And it's the same thing with human beings. We don't like to be the outliers because it's a self-preservation thing. We're worried that if we will expose ourselves to ridicule or to criticism or whatever the case may be. And so knowing that, understanding that all humans are wired that way, helps you go, this is natural. Like you can kind of observe yourself and realize that I'm behaving this way out of a normal biological need to preserve my myself and at the end of the day my ego. So just forgive yourself about doing that and go forward. I think that there's so much joy to be had when you can just let go and have a good time with it.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And I think, right, one thing that I tell people when they're nervous about trying this is it's not a commitment for life. You can try it out once, right? And see how it goes, right? Like that's the basic thing is, and that also helps people get over that initial hump is like, hey, this doesn't need to be any more than a one-time thing that you do for your friends so that they can come and have fun, right? And I recommend playing with people who have played with you before, running a game for them, because they're going to want to see you succeed. They're going to want to make you feel comfortable. But if it's more comfortable for you to run a game for somebody who hasn't run because maybe they don't know how it's going to go, and you want to see the joy of discovering a game light up on their face and how role-playing games work, that's also great, right? But going into it, just try it once, see how it goes. There are a lot of games, right, that I really love running. Starter sets I think are great, and a lot of role-playing games have them. Many have like a quick start adventure for free. If you wanted to run Daggerheart, I think there's a free Daggerheart adventure that comes with quick start rules. Very simple, like to learn and to run and to make going before you commit to buying, a big book and all that kind of stuff. So there's all these things where it's like simple quick start rules, pre-made characters, and they introduce you, including the person running the game, right, to the game in a way that is fun and easy to read and that sort of thing. And they want to make it engaging. So often that's a good way to go is like, hey, I'm just going to do this once. I'm not making any commitment to do anything else. Right. It's a Tinder date between you and running games, and you're just going to see how it goes. Right. And if it goes great, maybe you go on some more dates. And if it doesn't, that's fine too. Right. And that helps take the pressure off. I think some people, if it's like, look, I'm just going to do this once. It's horrible. I don't have to do it again, but it's not going to be as horrible as you think. And that will help you then, like, maybe do it again if you want to do it again. Right. And if you're like, hey, that went great, I never want to do it again. Now you know.
It's so true. It's so true, and I think that's with anything, right? Like you can't get better unless you do and are worried and are okay with messing up, right? Or like experimenting and trying. Like you can't get better until you actually do said subject, whatever that may be. Whether you want to play the guitar, whether you want to GM a game, whether you want to, write a book, whatever. You have to go. You have to be willing to suck, and you have to be willing to get started, right? You have to be willing to do that. That's the only way. No one comes out of the womb a brilliant GM, right? No one comes out of the womb a amazing artist. All artists with other artists that I teach, I always talk about how we all had our stick figure drawings that our moms put up on the refrigerator, right? Like,
yes,
all artists started that way. All of them did, right? And so part of that is actually doing things. That's how you develop that. By the way, everyone, we have some questions that have already been submitted that we're going to ask James when we get to the Q&A session in a moment. But if you guys start getting your questions ready, if you have other questions, and put them in the chat for James, we'll ask. So here's I wanted to ask you was on that note of like getting better, in your experience, what is the fastest way for a beginner to improve as a GM? How do you advise on that?
Yeah, so I think the one thing is, right, running games, right, is and I think getting there and running lots of games can be a great tool for you, right? To learn by doing is always huge. I sometimes will run the same adventure, and I think I learn a lot about game mastering then. And that helps you in two ways. One is you're prepped then, right? And so once you have that adventure, you might go to like your local convention or your local game store or your library and run it for a couple different groups of people. And that can help you learn like, oh, look, I can run for strangers, I can run for my friends, I can run for friends of friends, right? I can run for my family. And it helps you get relaxed, right? Because that is the biggest thing that we're sort of talking about, is feeling comfortable running a game and getting out of your own way. I think that another thing that has helped me greatly is, and this is a thing that I learned like 20 years into running games, was I had read an adventure called Curse of Strahd that is very popular for a lot of D20 fantasy D&D nerds out there, right? And then I listened to Chris Perkins, who was the author of that adventure, run this game on a podcast, and all of the things he changed, right?
Mhm.
That were just because the players wanted to do something else, and I was like, oh, I know what he's running from. And I know that he's changing all of these things because the players zigged when he maybe expected them to zag. And that was fine. And he rolled with it, and he did it this way because he knew enough about like, oh, well, they want to go over here instead of over there. That's fine. This just works this way. Or this, I'm going to take this character over here and I'm going to move them over here. Right. All that kind of stuff was really invaluable to me. So watching people run games, playing games, reading games, all interacting with games is hugely, hugely helpful. But then also, like, what are things that you love that are not games? How can you incorporate those into your game?
Mm.
Because in a tabletop role playing game, you can, right? And figuring out like, how can I take this thing I love and put it in my game will make it more entertaining for you, but will also start to teach you some things about like game design and getting better at running games, because you'll be covering subjects that you know well. So if you can pick things that will get your mind like, I don't need to worry about if you love fishing, right? I don't
Mm.
need to worry about what happens when like what a big fish would be, or I don't need to do a lot of research or prep because I already know fishing by heart, right? Then that's what we're going to do, right? I don't need to worry about what going to a play would be like, because I did a lot of theater in high school and college. And so I know what it's like backstage. I know different archetypes of actors and production people and directors and stage manager, right? Like that kind of thing. And so that can help you then up your game in the areas where you need it, because you're like, the subject matter I know well, right? And so I can become faster at these things by
Mm.
doing them. I remember once so I used to make television promos, right? Like coming up next, and I did a workshop that was all about how like often you'll see a television show like an opening or a commercial do one thing, then you'll see a zillion iterations of it, right? True Detective has their opening with all of these different overlays, and all of a sudden we see that everywhere, right? Until it gets parodied by Key and Peele, and then we're like, okay, now it's officially dead, we got to do something else. And one thing that the person running this workshop said that really stuck with me was like, I would much rather see something inspired by like your visit to a television commercial inspired by your visit to a textile mill, right? Inspired by a painting you saw, inspired by a novel you read, or the tree that you climbed, right? Anything like that, because you're still inspired, but you're riffing on that, right? And
Mhm.
so, and you might know that thing better than you do like actually how to use this technique that you're just trying to copy, right? It's more creative. And so I think that really does help people, is like, what do you know outside of games? Bring that into the game, and it'll help you learn all of the rest of the discipline a little bit better, because you won't be as worried about other stuff. You're like, okay, wait, this is how this works in fishing, so how do I backwards engineer it and make it work in the game? I don't need to look up one thing to make the other work, right?
That is very cool advice. That's very cool advice for that. And I mean, that's a really good way to look at it. I also loved how you were talking about, you really have to immerse yourself in the other material and see how other people do it. That's how when I talk to other artists, and I had to realize this as an artist myself, was that realizing that all artists, whether you're an artist, whether you're a writer, a musician, we all, and I know, James, you probably feel this too, is that we all want to have our own unique style. Everyone wants their style, right? But that unique style is a result of all the influences that you've had, that you've taken in, and you've,
Oh yeah.
right, and you've picked the things that you like from different influences, and then you create a new style based off that, right? And so it's not usually something that just comes out. It's actually, at least in my opinion, something that is a result of so much uh different things you've seen, different books you've consumed, different TV shows, different video games, whatever. You've pulled all these things together, and from all those different influences, you kind of create this blend, and you pick the things you want, and you create your own style. But the only way to do that is to like go study other people, go read other books, go read manga, go read comic books, go whatever. Just read as much as you can so you can get all these different influences, and then bring those, bring those pieces in. Um, it's sometimes we can get really caught up with just our own work, and we start leaving things on the out, but like going out there and experiencing makes a big difference. So
Yeah.
before we get to the Q&A, I have one last question I want to ask you, and I have a feeling based on our conversation what you're going to say, but I'm just going to ask. I want to see if I'm right. I'm not going to say what it is. Obviously, I'm going to let you answer. But if you could synthesize everything we've talked about, maybe no, let me rephrase that. If you could, in your philosophy of being a game master, and if you could boil it to one simple rule for you that makes running a great game, what would that be? If you were just say, this is my philosophy of what makes a great game, and why I'm successful at doing this, how would you put that?
Yeah, for me, right, I often tell people that RPGs are like sex, in that, like, if everybody's having fun, you're doing it right, right?
It's true. Yeah.
And but it, like, that's the thing, right? Is like, we're so concerned with getting it right? And the truth is, like, what is right is whatever at the end of the night, when you look around the table, everybody's like, man, that was a lot of fun, right? And they're going home happier than when they entered your place. You did it, right? Like, and that should also, by the way, include you, right? That, like, you need to do what's going to make you happy, right? And so on the other end of the spectrum, and these two pieces of advice should not be combined, but they basically mean the same thing, is, right, like, embrace your inner child, right? And so that's the idea, right? Is like, you want to uh, 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 like, check your inhibitions at the door. You're a kid playing pretend, and so are all of your friends. And if you get into it, they will too.
That's a great way to look at it. I really enjoyed that. I think that was a great way to put that together. Okay, so we have some questions from the audience. By the way, you guys, you're welcome to put in the chat your own questions. I have some that we've already collected. I'm going to go through. We appreciate James's time, so we don't want to keep him all evening. So I'm gonna ask him questions, and then and we'll go from there. So the first, I thought this was a really good question. How do you handle it if the game isn't going well or people seem bored?
Oh, that is a great question. And so I think one thing that, like, and you see this all the time on, like, RPG subreddits and advice forums and stuff, where people will say all this stuff. One big thing that you should know, you always have the power, and I do this a lot, is you have the power to talk to everybody outside of the game, right? What we call above the table, where you can say, like, hey, everybody, I'm getting, like, some feelings here that, like, maybe not everybody's into it, right? Like, let's talk about it. What's going on, right? Like, and so you always have that option. That's the best way to resolve any sort of conflict or tension at the table, I think, is not to try to, like, oh, take the magic items away and kill the character, and, like, or like, put them in jail, or it's like, no, just talk about it like adults above the table. That's one of the great joys of not being a child, is that you can say, like, hey, everybody, in terms of boredom and stuff, I do think what's good is to say, hey, why don't we take a break? Taking breaks are great, right? Gives people a chance to check their phones, use the bathroom, grab a snack, grab a drink, whatever, right? And I think during that time, right, if you don't want to make it so formal as pulling everybody, be like, you can pull somebody who you trust aside and say, hey, how's it going? It seems like maybe people are bored. What do you think? And then taking some time yourself during that break to kind of regroup and think about things and say, like, okay, what's going on here? And that combat's going on too long, so people feel like things are stale, or hey, things have been really like investigating, or the plot is too twisty and we got lost in it, right? There's cures for all of that, right? Like, hey, if combat's going too long and we're taking a break in the middle of combat, you know what I mean? Like, come back and have a quick way to wrap things up, right? Oh, this last goblin surrenders. Well, oh, cool. Guess what? Now it's become a negotiation and things are different. We've flipped the script. Hey, we need a little bit more action in here. Well, guess what? Somebody kicks in the door. And now all of a sudden, oh my gosh, we've been, as we were going through this investigation, we were being stalked by vampires, right? And now a bunch of vampires are upon us, right? So always looking at things, trying to talk to people to suss out like what's going on, because it could also be something as simple as, right, like, we all have lives outside of this. Hey, it looks like it really looked like Carl over there is bored. Well, actually, Carl's grandpa is sick and he's really preoccupied by it. And it's like, oh, okay, well, it's not your job to heal Carl's grandpa. It's your job to keep the game rolling and maybe keep the focus off Carl, right? Like, so figuring out what's going on is the first step, right? Because odds are it's not about you. But then taking it and just flipping the script and saying, like, okay, what always gets my attention, right? And when I'm reading a movie or a book, if I'm starting to nod off, well, it's like, oh, when this happens, right? And it's when there is some dramatic change in the action. And dramatic changes in the action are great for story anyway. So you're not going to mess things up by suddenly doing something like that. So that's my big advice, right? Is flip the script if you're feeling like people are bored, but talk to them first. Figure out if they actually are.
So there's actually a follow-up question to that I thought was a really good one, which was related to that kind of question. Was there a game that was just a catastrophic, just shit show where it just was not going, but that you managed to recover and make it a great experience? Has that happened to you?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. So first of all, there have definitely been games where I've looked around and I've thought, oh, everybody's bored, right? And this can happen a lot if you run games online. It's if you're running a game online, it's great because you can be with remote people, but also the internet, the entirety of like human culture is one click away, right? And you can be like, oh wait, is somebody checking they're checking their email, or are they watching YouTube, right? Like, what's going on? And so I've often, especially running online games, felt like I need this. How do I get this engagement back, right? And so I did have a game where, again, it's not all on you, right? And there was I had a player, right, who had this sort of secret that, if it were to be revealed, was going to blow up sort of the relationships that all of the original characters that the player characters had, right? Like, all their relationships, the player character relationships, were really going to be like, oh no, this has all been built on a house of cards, right? And often exists, though, right? That people create these incredible characters that have these backstories where all these things are going on, and we like wait for those things to come forth. But I think you should always think of your game as a television show that is on the brink of cancellation, right? So if you watch shows like, Parks and Recreation, which was always on the brink of cancellation, right? There's all these things that happen throughout the season because they're like, well, we want to do this before the story ends, so we better have these characters get together. We better have this happen. We better have this person get promoted. We better have this secret come out. We better have this, right? And it's like, you should do that because guess what? You're always going to have more ideas. So when you don't get canceled, it's going to happen. But you don't want to keep those things in waiting. So this was a person who I was like, okay, like, let's see. And this was a game of Dungeons and Dragons. The character was a wizard, right? But actually they were a warlock with a secret warlock patron who had been like harassing other people in the party. And so when it was revealed that like the patron showed up, right, and was like, hey, it's time for us to talk, everybody's like, oh, I got right. And like everybody all of a sudden paying attention, shouting, yelling, right? Friends become enemies, enemies become friends, the whole thing going on. And they band together to fight this. They're like, oh no, he's actually keeping you down this whole time. That's why this happened and this happened and this happened. And right. And that big battle against this patron, right, that showed up. And so like that really saved it. And so always rely, your players have a lot of inner drama in their characters' lives, rely on that stuff too. That's, they're always their ears will, they're not paying attention necessarily to like your big bad, but when the blah blah blah's long lost father shows up, they all sit up because it becomes a soap opera and they're at the center of it, right? So that's one way to do it too.
Well, so you mentioned you used Carl as an example in one of our big fans is named Carl, and he asked a question. He had a question that came up in the chat that was about what's your advice about designing a new campaign? What's your approach on it, and how do you give it more depth when you're doing your prep?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. So for me, right, I used to create a lot when I was doing a new campaign, and if I was creating a world from scratch, right, it was like I would detail out every single body of water and settlement and stuff like that. And now I generally start with like an overview of like, okay, what's going on here? What's sort of the central conceit, right? Maybe there's a worldwide drought, right? So water is at a premium, right? And there are people who control water, okay, and they're called this, right? Like, okay, now I got the conceit of the world, and now you're gonna start here in this little section, and that's all I need to worry about is I know kind of what's going on. I know globally what is influencing things, right? On a macro scale, not on like a every single way that these, let's call them hydro lords, right? This is all just off the top of my head. So forgive the terrible names. These hydro lords, right, are like tyrants and they're ruling things, right? But okay, I don't need to know all of their secret organizations that they have and who's enforcing what, and like I don't need to know that. I know they probably do have power, and right, that power works in this way, but all I need to care about right now is this little community right here. What's going on? What are the problems around there? And then I share that in like a pitch document with the players, and I say, what do you think about this? Often I'll share like two or three, right, and say like which one's your favorite, and we pick one to play, and then I'll talk to them about like, okay, let's have session 0. I don't do any more work, right? And in session 0 we talk about making characters, and that's when I start to do more stuff, right? Is because it's like, oh, okay, this is what Carl wants to play, right? Carl is interested in this aspect of the world and really wants to know like what about like people standing up against the hydro lords? I want to be like part of an underground resistance. Oh, okay, well, yeah, there probably would be an underground resistance. Let's add that in there, right? And so the players help me build that depth, and then I know that I'm creating something that like they're interested in, rather than creating a whole organization that like, we're not really that interested in interacting with this, that, or the other thing, right? So if you can create a pitch document, and like literally the pitch is like a paragraph, right? Here's the global overview in the first sentence. Here's where you're starting, and that's it, right? And then start from there and go from there, I think is a great way to get a lot of depth in your world by linking up with your players at first, and then you just build it as you go. And that helps you create a more organic story that they can be drawn into, which I think is good.
You know, I don't know how I'm curious what you feel about this, but for me personally, I drag a lot of the stuff that I do with manga creation into what I do, which is I always feel timelines are probably some of the most important elements of this, in that I hate being caught with a logical hole, where it's like, so, yeah. Right. It's like, and so I kind of obsess over like, like behind the scenes work I do for like timelines, I love using like spreadsheets where I will like plan out the major events of a universe and then overlay the characters and put their ages and time, the ages and dates, like, when they were born, etc., and mapping it over so that we can see the overlapping timelines, because you end up preventing like logical disasters if you're like, well, wait, that couldn't have happened because this happened. You're saying that your character was saw this war happen, but they weren't even born yet. So how is that even possible? Preventing. For me, I maybe that's my OCD, but I'm very much about that.
Yeah.
I'm very much about that kind of aspect of it.
That's great. Yeah, I think creating history and timelines is awesome. And that's also the kind of thing where you can have like you can fill it out as you create more stuff, right? Because you've got your, hey, this is my macro scale timeline. The Hydro Lords come to power, the drought starts, everything was prosperous before this, right? And that sort of thing. And then as you're filling in details, you can say like, oh, okay, let me do this. Let me here, players, where do you fall on this timeline? You're here, you're 1,000 years old, right? I mean, D&D has elves and stuff in it. It's like you're 1,000, you remember the time before the Hydro Lords, and you can have a lot of fun with that. And I do think it helps you fill those holes where if you're not making that kind of timeline, right, somebody can say to you like, well, wait, I'm 1,000 years old, wouldn't I remember X, Y, and Z? And you're like,
Yeah,
yeah, wait,
right.
this changes a lot of things, right? So filling that out, I think, helps you, because then you can also say like, actually, the drought started 2,000 years ago, right? If you want it to be that no one remembers a time before the drought, that kind of thing.
That's why I love like the traditional. I'm very much like, my religion is the 3-act structure of storytelling, and I absolutely love like, once like their main tent poles, you're turning your inciting incident, your turning points, your midpoint, etc. Once you have like these big tent poles figured out, everything else can kind of slot in based on that. I think people sometimes get overwhelmed trying to create everything from, okay, on the first day God created the sun. It's like, okay, well,
Yes.
it can get overwhelming, right? Like, so we'd have to go that. And I fall into that trap personally too. I get into like going farther and farther and farther back, so that I can justify everything, in the name of depth. So, okay, this other question: how would you handle a situation where players are sort of overstepping, like their characters are overpowered, or they're trying to do things that are too crazy?
Huh. That is also an above the table situation for me, right? Like that's where I go to first is like, hey, and it starts with fun, right? Like there's a thing that we as game designers say, right, that has been said over and over again, which is like, given the opportunity, players will optimize the fun out of a game, meaning that uh,
Yeah.
uh, a a lot of gamers, if they are given choices that are better than others, will take those choices and they can't help themselves, right? Even if they're like, this makes no sense for me to have this option narratively. I need it because it's the best one in the game, and why wouldn't you take it, right? And now everybody can fly, and now it makes my life harder because I had this whole rock climbing adventure prepared, right? And so I think saying to people, right, remember that like part of what's great about role playing games is there's this rule of like, you can change the rules as the game master, and saying to your players, like, hey, I've noticed, or if it's just one player who's super overpowered, taking them aside and having this conversation, I've noticed that like there's no longer a challenge because of X, right? And I would like to change X to Y, right? Or I think maybe we should change X. I don't know exactly how. Let's talk about it, right? How do you feel about it? And they may say, like, we're having a blast being able to fly. And you might say, okay, well, let me think about that then, because I'm not having fun, but maybe I can design scenarios where if you all can fly, every enemy can fly. There are harder challenges. There are things, right? Like that kind of thing. Um, if it is someone is repeatedly trying to do something that they shouldn't be able to do in the game, or is just kind of doomed to fail, right? So like there's all different levels, right? Draw Steel, the game we made, is pretty gonzo in terms of like the stuff you can do. You're basically medieval Marvel superheroes, right? Um, but maybe you're playing a game like Call of Cthulhu, which is about like regular people in the 1920s taking on eldritch horrors, right? Trying to do the same stuff in these games is very different. You shouldn't be able to do most of the things that you can do in Draw Steel in a game like Call of Cthulhu. And so we should that's like a conversation that happens about tone, right? Now you can set yourself up for more success if you have a session zero where you talk about tone, or a document or an email where you're like, hey, this is kind of what the game's like, and you here are some examples of things that you can do, and here are some examples of things that are too over the top for this world, right? That's a great thing to talk about. But if you haven't had that conversation, again, I think pulling those players aside and saying like, hey, this isn't really a game where your characters are able to do this kind of thing. You're more a regular person, right? Or those aren't the kinds of over the top things you can do in this game, but here are some that actually you could do. I know you're trying to get solve creatively. I know you're trying to have fun, but it's making it hard for me to have fun when this occurs, right? Like I think that's the kind of thing, is that for a lot of people what they're talking about is like, this is fun for me, but they don't realize it's making it not fun for everybody else. And so
Mm.
you have to have that conversation with them about like, hey, and they're your friend, right? They want to be told that. I would much rather be told, hey, you're acting like an a-hole, than continuing to act like an a-hole, right?
Mhm.
Especially when I'm among my friends, right? I wanted to make sure they're going to have a good time too. So that's, talk about it above the table.
I think it's also when I do one-on-ones with fans who are creating Flux Fantasy characters, I often advise them to, like, we'll show them, for example, in the universe, the magic system is called Karmistry, is the name of the magic system. They use karma to manipulate reality, but payback is real. Payback is the universe does not like when you manipulate real life, and you get literal payback comes after you for doing that. And
Yes.
there's these karmistry schools that people go to, and one of the main ones is called Wolfgang Academy. That happens in the manga. And I talked to some of fans who have one-on-ones with me about designing their characters, and when I showed them, like, for example, the uniform design, like, if you maxed out your uniform, you could have all these like honor cords and badges and what, like, it's like you could go crazy with it. And I think it's natural to want to like max out your character. I want all this cool stuff, right? But sometimes working with less and having your character, imagine a character has no honors at all, just a standard uniform, right? And they have to earn it, like earning the designations that they have and the honors they have are important. If you're going to do all that, I feel like you have to justify it narratively. How did they get that, right? Because otherwise it's just festooned on your uniform. It doesn't mean anything. It just look cool, but it doesn't have the depth that it needs. And so, like, I always feel that making sure that that how do I put this? I think a lot of people think that um like restrictions or limitations are somehow creatively limiting, when really working within the confines of limitations actually makes you more creative, right? It's very easy to like max out everything but like working with less makes you more creative, because it literally means that how does this character who just has, like, for example, I loved watching how there were so many YouTube videos of people who play like Breath of the Wild, for example. How does Link go beat Ganon with just a stick or a broom or whatever? I forgot what it was, like a stick outside. It's like, how do you do that? That's cool, right? That's like a real challenge. How do you make that happen? I think narratively, that's a something that's kind of fun to think about too. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I agree completely.
So our last question for tonight is one that we hear a lot too, and it has to do with acting and performing, basically within games. What, which I know is like is for a lot of people. They get shy, and which I totally understand why. But the question, the way it was posed, was, what if I'm not great at voices or acting? Can I still
Oh
be a
yeah.
good GM?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So, a lot of people don't do voices, right? And I think there's, obviously Critical Role has come to rise. Brennan Lee Mulligan in Dimension 20, right? These people are great performers, right? But you are not creating an actual play for people to watch. You are creating something that you are making with your friends. You are a writer's room working together, right? And there is absolutely nothing wrong with not having any voices to do other than your own. I've played with a lot of people that way. Matt Colville doesn't do a ton of voices. He's a great game master to play with. I have probably about 4 voices. And my friends sometimes make fun of me, and that's part of the fun of playing the game with them, honestly. That they're like, that guy sounded exactly like the last person we met, who sounded like the woman we met before that, right? And it's like, yeah, well, what can I tell you? I'm me, right? Um, and so if you're looking for characters to be the thing that is great about a voice, right, is that it helps a character be distinct. But there's a lot of ways that you can make a character distinct without a voice. And I've had to learn them because I don't have that many distinct voices inside of me,
Mm.
right? And so things like, hey, this is the character who bites their nails. Hey, this is the character who picks their nose, right? You can pick a behavior. This is the character who always uses the same phrase over and over again. This is the character who loves puns. This is the character who is always eating something that when we talk to them, right? Like you can pick all of these different things. This is a character who loves wearing purple, right? And you can make a note about that, right? Like, okay, Harold, the NPC, loves wearing purple, right? That kind of thing. And this person smells like lilies, right? And you just describe that to the players, right? Because they're not just listening to you, they're picturing it in their mind, right? And you can give them, in fact, it may even be better to draw on senses other than sound when they are talking to characters because they'll remember oh, this person smells like sulfur, or oh,
Mhm.
this person when you shook their hand had, a slimy hand. What was that about, right? Like I'm going to remember slimy guy when that comes up, and so it is totally fine. Most people don't have don't use voices, and those who do only have about 4 or 5 in them because we're people and not voice actors, right? Or improvisers or anything like that. And so, yeah, absolutely, yeah, it should not prevent you at all from playing around. And also, like, uh, that's a skill that if you're like you really want to learn to do accents and you want to learn like, hey, there's whole YouTube videos, you'll be an accent master by the end of the month if you really want to learn that kind of thing, but you really don't have to. I've been doing this for a long time and I have not gotten any better at doing voices, and I do think I've gotten a lot better as a game master in that time.
Well, it's about the fun. I think at the end of the day, just going in there, it's kind of brings us all the way back to the beginning of our conversation, which was it's just have a good time and remember what it was like to be 12 again when you were playing with your friends and didn't have the inhibitions that we have now. I think that makes a big difference. Is there anything? So as we kind of wrap up, are there any like final thoughts you have that you want to share that you're very passionate about? In this discipline of being a game master and running games, is there anything that you're very passionate about that you want to share with everyone?
Yeah, I think the big thing is I think everybody should try it because I do think it is not as scary as you thought. And there's a story my boss likes to tell where he was running D&D at work for a bunch of people. And a guy who who he normally played with but wasn't in this group, was in like another group he ran, came over and was like, "Ooh, can I see your notes?" And Matt was like, "Sure." And he handed him one sheet of paper that he had prepared to run like a 4-hour session, and the guy went, "This is it. I could do this," right?
Mhm.
And that's what inspired Matt to go make his series about running the game, right?
Mhm.
Um, and the truth is, right, like that is kind of it. We're all just people. Everybody wants everybody to succeed. Everybody wants everybody to have a good time. Your players want you to have a good time just as much as you want them to have a good time. Remember that you're not in it alone. You're doing this with them, right? It's a team sport and you're doing it together. And really embracing that inner child is something that I think is really fun. And the thing that I feel most passionate about is that, like, if you're worried about this, it's because you really care about it. And you're probably, because you care about it, going to be really freaking great.
Oh,
And so just remember that, right? Like that you care. And that's the first and most important thing about being a game master.
I love that. And one of my favorite quotes is that you are one decision away from a different life. And it's so true,
Mhm.
right? Is that and that decision can be anything. It can be a practical decision like, oh, I want to move across the country or whatever. Or it can be kind of an attitude question, right? Like, I am going to stop being so scared about doing this, right? I'm going to actively do that. And so I just really appreciate that. And James, I can't tell you how much we
Right.
appreciate you coming and spending this afternoon with us. I know you're super busy and you spent so much time with us. And I know that people, I've been getting messages and people are just so really enjoyed this conversation and hearing your insight. We just deeply appreciate you doing this and spending some time with us here. If people want to follow your work or follow you, are there any places you want to send people to?
Yeah, so I am on Blue Sky. It's my first name, last name, James Introcaso, Introcaso. And if you want to follow Crows, the RPG that I'm currently developing, if you go to mcdm.gg/crows-rpg, that will take you to the backer kit page where there's a countdown and you can sign up to get notified. But there's also like a description of what the game is like and that sort of thing. Or you just search Crows MCDM on your search engine of choice. It'll come up. There's also videos of me talking about it and stuff like that. So that's what I'm working on next. Draw Steel is the heroic game. All that's at mcdmproductions.com. You can see everything that we're working on over there.
Awesome. We'll make sure to add those links to the description so you guys can all check it out from there. So if you didn't happen to get it, we'll make sure that those get on there. So thank you so much, James. Really appreciate it. And to the rest of you guys, Flux Fantasy Fest Day 2 continues. The actual play, Chapter 1 of the Flux Fantasy game, The Carnival, starts shortly in Discord. Discord is open for everyone. Normally, you have to be on Patreon or make a purchase to get in, but during the event, it's open. So now's a great time to go in and go watch. So this is a great time if you want to go see what it's like to watch a game in progress. It'll be taking place. Chapter 1 is happening tonight, and then following that is our mixer on Discord that closes out the night. So I hope you guys go do that, and then tomorrow we've got a full big day ahead. So I'm looking forward to seeing all you guys on there. So, anyways, James, thanks so much. I hope you have a great night, and talk to all you guys soon. Good night.
Thank you, and thanks to everybody watching. Bye.
All right, good night.